Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
There's a couple of things that are different. One is, you might notice that Irene isn't wearing any glasses.
Yeah, well that's because I got my cataracts removed. I will be wearing glasses again soon. I'm getting some bifocals because I don't really need much vision correction for up close. I mean for distance, but I'm really, I won't say blind up close, but I can't see the details up close. So I really kind of need to wear glasses all the time anyway. Either that or I've got a pair of cheaters right now that I picked up at the drugstore. So I'm going to be getting glasses again. It's just safer working in jewelry to always have on safety glasses. So,
well, then maybe not full safety glasses, but at least the polycarbonate lens will protect you from direct on the strike.
Right, and if I'm doing anything that's really dangerous, I wear a face shield. So somebody thinks we should play with him right now.
Yeah, so the other thing is, a few people have noticed these are a shooting set of earplugs that will muffle the sounds of firearms, and you can also receive Bluetooth. Now the problem with these are a lot more expensive than the isotunes that I've used for many, many years. But the isotunes somehow, somewhere along the line, changed their formula for the orange coating that goes over the unit.
They don't hold up. They don't hold up at all. Within a couple of weeks, they start falling apart, and then at some point the switches don't work anymore, and then they start coming up. I mean, it was like you flipped a switch, and all of a sudden the quality of manufacturing went down the toilet.
I'm really disappointed in that because they worked extremely well, and they had one big benefit that this set doesn't have. I can't get the adapters to go into my ear because my ear canal on the outside is smaller than what they supply.
Yeah, and that is the most common complaint I hear about them, actually. When if you go through and you read all the things they're like, and I still haven't been able to find I love the way they work, but the ear things are not comfortable because they're too big for my ear holes.
So far, that's two things that we haven't talked about in advance. Every once in a while, I like to do this with Irene now. Not tell her what we're going to talk about until we sit down to talk.
It's dangerous, of course. I may have an opinion.
She has an opinion. Of that you can be assured. The last topic that I want to talk about on this show is off-grid and homesteading and a lot of things relating to that. Now, there's a channel that we've watched for many years.
Right.
It's Homesteady, and I'll put a link in the description to their channel.
Right.
It's a great channel, nice people. They've had several children.
We first started watching them when they just had a couple of kids, and they were living in Connecticut.
On, I think, 7 or 8 acres, if I remember.
Something relatively small. It was a little valley, sort of a tucked-in thing between some hills there. And they went through all kinds of things there because they were city folk, is the blunt way to put it. They were city folk who moved out to the country and thought they could handle everything.
Well, kind of the country, and
well, for them it was the country because it wasn't like in an established neighborhood with little squares. So, yeah, there was all the things they learned there, which was, I mean, there's times when we have chosen not to watch them. I grew up in New York as a kid on Long Island.
And the problem is that Ost, who's the male host of this channel,
was a stereotypical obnoxious kid like I went to high school with. The boys who knew every freaking thing on the planet, who were the coolest, the bestest, the mostest, and having kept up with my class, graduating class, most of them are dead now. And
that naturally happens because...
It does because we get old, but in their case, it was almost all misadventure. And,
so,
it doesn't shock me a bit because they were in a giant case of misadventure in high school.
So we've watched this channel for quite a number of years, and it's been interesting to see their progression from moving to a larger suburban homestead. They were calling a homestead, which was really some goats, which met with an untimely end.
Right. They had chickens. They had, I think at one point they raised pigs, but
He liked to raise pigs.
right. But they had issues with that too, and they had chickens that they had. I think they may have tried guinea fowl. Guinea fowl could be a challenge for anyone.
They're
a difficult
really
bird.
noisy.
And yeah, I mean, they're great alarm bells, but whew, if you have neighbors, they may shoot them. See, they had a cow. They had a milk cow there, and they had a garden. Now, Henry and I have had these conversations a million times when we watch videos from all kinds of people. You get these people who think they've got it covered because they could raise 2 zucchini and 4 tomatoes and 5 carrots. When you have 5 children and 2 adults, that's not gonna cover it.
Not even close.
And he doesn't like vegetables. He loves to hunt, and he is apparently pretty good at that. So he has, over the years, brought in great quantities of deer, mostly, I guess. I think he also may shoot wild turkey, and I don't know if he does ducks or not. That's a thing. People tend to be bird people, and I know he's big into deer. But they moved to Pennsylvania.
They moved from their place in Connecticut
Right.
to Western Pennsylvania?
Yes, Western Pennsylvania. It's not that far from. I think it's about 121 miles from Pittsburgh or something like that.
So it's to a family property.
Right.
And they
Right.
put the money out to build a second floor apartment for them to move into. It was great. And I have to say, I've enjoyed watching both of them learn together as they're moving along. And that's kind of where I wanted to go today, which was they decided that since they were going to go off-grid
Right.
on a piece of property that they've purchased, and they've started building a pond on, and they have a lot of the raw land being converted to be able to be used for homes and barns and things like that.
Right, and water collection. They were working really hard to slope everything and create a pond that they were going to have fish in, which was going to be another protein source, and all that kind of stuff.
So they decided that rather than jump into off-grid homesteading on their own property, they would spend this past summer in Alaska
On a completely off-grid property. And
well, it's kind of off-grid.
Well, it has a water source. They have a pump. But there's no electricity. You have to provide that yourself. And my response was not something I should repeat in public, because my response in clean terms was, these people are the ultimate suburbanites living on a farm.
And this goes for a lot of people. It's not just them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the really good news for them is they decided to go try this. Now, although they were in Alaska, and it sounds like they were really far out.
They're only 10 miles down the road from a Safeway. So it's
they're close enough. And yes, their driveway, the road going into the cabin where they stayed.
Oh, and they're complaining
longish.
about it the whole way in, and we're watching it going, that road's pretty darn good. That's better than our main road coming in. Gee, that's as nice as our driveway. Somebody maintains that. Yeah. And they're fussing apparently they don't ever drive on dirt roads where they live. Ever.
So there's a lot of things that go into starting a homestead off-grid, which is really the big thing that I want to underline here. It's
right.
Off-grid.
Right.
And you're starting with nothing.
Right.
We've done that here. Right. And it's not easy.
Well, we didn't even do it with nothing. We at least had a basic, there was a trailer here when we moved here, and there was a septic system here, which we considered to be a big deal because it passed inspection, which means we were to code on a septic system. And we had a really basic electrical system that was way substandard, but it was upgradable.
Yeah, the original solar system that we had
It
here
was a couple of car batteries.
This odd collection of different batteries, different types,
Whoever did
different
it didn't
capacity.
know what they were doing. But it was something you could work with.
And the inverter was no great shakes. I
No.
gave the inverter
No.
to somebody who later came onto our property to work as a watchman for us,
Right.
caretaker, because we traveled then on Irene's business, and we needed to make sure somebody was here.
So that it didn't all walk away while we were gone.
Because funny thing, when you move off grid in a rural part of the country,
Yeah.
a lot of people look and see, well, you have an awful lot of wood over there that's not being used and is not being
Yeah, you get
watched.
some new windows. Yeah, I mean, this is not just here. We were warned when we were developing a piece of property in California that if we got deliveries of building supplies, we had to camp up there because they would be stolen.
And the same thing goes for Maine. It went in Virginia.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere because there's always some local crook that is willing to take advantage of it.
So let's talk about the shock when Austin, his parents, got to the property, and then when the rest of the family came.
Well, first they just about died just looking at the road. Now, that is one of the nicest dirt roads I've seen in a long time.
You know, we haven't seen the entire thing because we haven't seen the entire thing.
No, but the pictures they showed, which they thought showed some of the worst of it, I'm going, that's a great road, and it seems to be very sandy. So the only problem you have with sand is if it gets to be too loose, then you can sink yourself.
Yeah, so if it dries out, a lot of sand gets really, really slick between itself. So
Right.
so it'll spin out from under your tires.
But it didn't look like it was going to be that kind. It reminded me of the roads out on Long Island where my grandparents lived when I was a little kid.
Yeah, so a lot of this is difference in age group.
Yeah.
We're a lot older than the people at Homesteady.
Right, and I was used to dirt roads. I didn't think anything of dirt roads as a kid.
We're probably close to 25, 30 years older than them.
Probably.
And both of us lived in a less developed environment, even though you lived on Long Island.
Yeah, but my parents lived in suburbia, but we used to go out to visit my grandparents, and there were a lot of dirt roads out there. They were sand roads. They weren't dirt. They were sand, because that's a sandy area.
When they first got to the cabin, there were a lot of things that were minor inconveniences.
Yeah, and his dad's attitude was,
Yeah,
we'll fix it. You know, and he was like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And I'm looking at the place going, your wife and children, they're going to hate this. They are accustomed to a large, spacious, very, very comfortable house with, you have to have a hot bath before bed. You have to have this, you have to have that. You can't bathe in a bucket.
If you think about a lot of people, if you live in suburbia, or you live in the city.
Yeah.
Off the topic for a second, there's a person who lives down in the Phoenix area who owns property up here on the ranch where we own property, and she got a nasty shock because she was used to ordering food delivery, grocery deliveries from the grocery store to her home during the pandemic when things were shut down.
Right.
And she tried to do the same thing here.
Right.
And what happened?
Well, it wasn't DoorDash, it was another one.
Instacart.
Instacart. It said that there was somebody here who would deliver stuff from the Family Dollar, and they never showed up. So there's a fault in the system there.
Or the person.
There's probably one person
who does Instacart could have been shuttling somebody down to Prescott or to Phoenix or to Flagstaff, or just turned their phone off so they didn't have to be working.
Crap. Yeah, I mean, it's like we laugh because I have a bunch of apps on my phone. Like when we're traveling and stuff, we'll be looking ahead at a city, and we'll say, okay, I think it's time for lunch. Do you want to do Jersey Mike's, or do you want to do Jimmy John's, or do you want to do one of these other Cracker Barrels or whatever? And I will look ahead, and in the case of the sandwich places, I will order the stuff on my phone ahead of time, so when we get there, the stuff is ready for us. Literally, I order it like 4 minutes before I know we're going to hit the place, and then we might have to wait 5 or 10 minutes max, and we'll have our lunch, because we're trying not to spend a lot of extra time. Time when the vehicle is parked is for bathroom breaks and eating, and that's it. You know, you don't want to be waiting around for somebody to make your sandwich. So we laugh because every once in a while I'll get some alert. I got one yesterday that said, "Oh, Jersey Mike says we'll deliver for free."
I told Irene,
you should try it.
order, see if we can get it.
Yeah, right. I mean, the closest Jersey Mike's is
Flagstaff.
Yeah, 60 miles from here.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that go into going off grid. Let's talk about how we went from where we lived in suburbia to our first quasi off grid property, which was in Virginia, and from there into Maine and California. When we moved from Western Virginia, which is the epitome of cityfied
townhouses, foot to cheek, all the way down, heavily developed. It was a planned community. The nice thing about that being that there was no above ground electrical.
Right.
So even if there was a really bad ice storm or something, which that part of the United States used to get a lot of ice storms in those days, you never lost power unless the entire grid went down, because our section was all underground. So you didn't have the usual, it tears down the electric lines things.
It was a nice community to live in. It was expensive.
It was expensive. We only had one car. You worked long hours, and I had a brand new baby.
Yeah, we had a new child.
Yeah.
And I spoke with a person from work and said, "Hey, I'm looking for someplace a little bit further out." And Lofty said, "Hey, my wife knows of somebody. Why don't you
check out there?" Yeah.
So we did, and we moved on to Mr. Thompson's property. We leased 500 acres,
right,
with a pond. And yes, we weren't off grid most of the time.
Well, that area was rather susceptible to power outages, but the only thing that affected was we had a well.
We heated with wood.
We heated with wood, and most of the time we had electricity. So it was actually a good kind of an intermediate step. The place was not fancy at all, super basic. It had a roof that didn't leak. It was heatable in the wintertime as long as you all slept in the main room. You couldn't heat the bedrooms. But it was a great intermediate step. We weren't in suburbia anymore. We went shopping about twice a month for groceries, and we filled the freezer, and we ate out of the freezer. And you ate fresh vegetables until they were gone, and then you ate frozen vegetables. And that got us into the habit of that particular pattern of buying and living. And it was a good step away from suburbia for us.